Hey, welcome back again for another video on the channel. Today we're going to be doing another episode of Do With This Information As You Wish or Want or Will. The W. But yeah, let's go ahead and get into it. I think today we're just going to do like 3 stories. Don't remember them off the top of my head, but actually they're not really stories. More or less just kind of like 3, things, but I think 2 of them more or less deal with men and women, male, female humans. And the third one is something that is universal to roughly all humans. So let's get into it. According to the CIA's World Fact Book, which I don't know why, I just never really thought about them having a book like that. But anyways, according to them, women outnumber men in pretty much most countries around the world. According to the statistic, the ratio is about 0.97 men per women in the United States alone. In other countries, I think it can get down all the way to like 0.86. So yeah, you could definitely be outnumbered by women in quite a few countries, which if you're into women, it's a numbers game out there. So you got a better chance. Funny enough, though, when it comes to birth rate on average around the whole world, there are actually more men that are being born than women. On average, I think they say for about every 100 women, there are 107 men that are born. Or should I say girls versus boys, because they're not really men or women yet. But you get what I'm saying. You get where we're going with this. So I know what you're probably thinking. Okay. Well, for some weird reason, there are more women that are walking the planet right now, but more men, or should I say boys, whatever, are being born. So how is that adding up? Well, there's one simple explanation, and it's an unfortunate truth, which is mortality rate. Yes. So unfortunately, if you are born a male, there is a higher likelihood that you probably won't make it to C25. Now, that's not to say that just making it to 25 in itself is a tough feat, but I mean, early 20s kind of suck once you look back, don't they? College is cool, but it kind of sucks, but I digress anyways. But yes, when it comes to it, on average, there's going to be a higher mortality rate for males than it is for females. And this is not really exclusive to the US. This is a global world thing. So yeah, this is such a thing that on average, between the ages of 15 to about 24, which funny enough, remember I said 25, but between the ages of 15 to 24, if you are a male, you are 5 times more likely to die compared to your female counterparts. And to also make it even worse, a specialist at Columbia University who I think specializes, in like gender medicines or something like that, went on to say that unfortunately for males, you are more likely to also die because you are prone to riskier behaviors. So it is believed that in this age range specifically, men have a higher chance to have side effects from testosterone and other boyish hormones. And unfortunately, these hormones do make you do dumb things that you may not do. Like, for example, this also is a thing too. Have you ever noticed that sometimes, and you may have noticed this happen to you even yourself, that like whenever you were hanging out with the boys, especially, it could still happen as an adult, but especially during this kind of age range between like 15 to 24, whenever a group of boys gets together, it just gets a little rowdier at the safest. And anything can kind of happen. But have you noticed that energy does change though whenever you are with your boys, and then there's like this collective group of hormones and bad decisions that get made? Well, yeah, this could potentially put you in the grave a little bit earlier, so check that. But amongst these deaths are things such as car accidents, possibly HOM or SU. You know the words. Look, I've been looking at the views lately. The past few topics were pretty controversial, not gonna lie. So, the HOM and then the SU thing, that happens. hello to the other side. There you go. But yeah, those are some of the causes that potentially shorten the lifespan of a male between those ages, along with possibly drinking and, I think I said driving accidents. So kind of pairing that with, craziness and drinking. And yeah, so tough life in the 20s of a young boy. However, after the age of 24, if you can make it to 25, you become an OG. And when you become an OG, they say that the levels start to even out a little bit as far as men versus women on mortality rates. So if you can make it to 25, chances of you kind of, living a longer life actually increase. Until you hit about, I think, 50 again. So then once you hit about 50 again for males, then you start declining again, and the likelihood of you surviving starts to drop again. So it's very important that I get this information in front of you now. Now, some of the risks that are associated with that side of it is, believe it or not, years and years of building up from smoking or drinking, so possibly organ failure or organ problems, and also just overall health risks, possibly from laborious work or other things of that nature. And this is a very, very, very important one, and this is ultimately the real reason why I wanted to do this particular subject. So another reason why a lot of men actually die during this age, basically 50 and beyond, is again from the Sue hello to the other side. So what's actually pretty sad is because of this, I don't want to call it macho nature, but I'll say this, and you will probably know this, and you've probably seen it. So let's just say it's a weekend, right? Both of your parents are off work. Now, every household obviously varies, and whenever we get into these subjects on this video in particular, you're going to notice, obviously, there are a lot of different factors that go into this. But overall, this is kind of what happens. So let's just say it's a weekend, right? And I don't know, let's just say it's a family. It's a husband and a wife. So basically a mom and a dad and a few kids. Let's just say 3 kids. And I don't know, for argument's sake, you can make the kids whatever you want to make them. 2 boys, 1 girl, 2 girls, 1 boy, whatever. Mixed match, whatever. But what happens typically on the weekend and what happens overall? So this is what's actually kind of funny. Let's just say we have a typical family, right? I don't know, the modern family from the 50s. So overall, what happens is over this time period where, let's say it is a stay-at-home wife or whatever, more than likely she's going to develop a friend group and a network group, possibly of other mothers or, people around that same feminine nature. Unfortunately for the men who have been working basically their whole life, and it could be a toss-up. Some of them may consider their coworkers as friends. Some of them may keep it strictly work-related. Well, what tends to happen is in their older ages, these men who have been working so long and haven't really developed any kind of friends get lonely. And you've probably seen this. You'll see maybe the mother going out with the daughter and, shopping, having, brunch with other, women and things like that. And they've developed these like social groups. And during these social groups, a lot of education is passed just from, the femininity side, which is pretty dope. But unfortunately, that doesn't really happen too much with men. So the guy is just left sitting at home watching ESPN alone like a weirdo. So these social bonds don't really develop much with men in those later ages. Now, again, like I said, these factors change for a lot of people, but typically that's one of the big key factors to the Sue hello to the other side is men just don't develop these friendship bonds later on in their life. So fellas, I'm throwing this out there to you now so you are aware of this and you don't end up in your 50s looking around all alone by yourself on the weekends and have no friends or friend networks to chop it up with and have fun with on the weekends. So that should just be the moral of that. You need to reach out and have communication with people, a little bit more, because these friendships could carry you a long way into your retirement days. So there's that. Also, don't smoke. Watch your alcohol consumption, things along those late natures, and you may make it to see a longer life. Next up, and boy, I guarantee this won't be controversial at all, let's talk about attraction. According to Dr. Beverly Palmer, who is a professor at California State University, attraction for basically all of us, don't you try to high road me on this. Attraction for all of us starts at an initial eyesight, which I have opinions on this. Okay, so listen, I know some people say, you know, they're pansexual, you know, sapiosexual, whatever, whenever, however, hetero, homo, whatever. At the base of it, we do still find some kind of visual attraction. Of course, unless you are, you know, actually blind or impaired. But we do find some type of attraction in what we see. Now, understand this, and this is the very important part about this, because you have to understand there is a slight difference between just what initially triggers you and then what you engage with later on in the relationship. So understand that. That's very important for what we're about to talk about for the rest of this segment, because I'll keep bringing this up. You have to understand that. And like I said earlier, there's going to be a lot of factors that play into a lot of these topics. There is no one boom set in stone. This is how it rolls. Okay. I'm saying this now. Don't try to come for me. So a few different things that we look for. One, it's going to be in the facial region. There are actually certain things that we look for in that region. Also, of course, it is going to be in the body. Now, very important, there's actually something you can look up. It's called WHR. This is a short acronym, and it stands for waist to hip ratio. Okay, waist to hip ratio. Now, scientists, they do all kinds of wacky doodle projects and research and whatnot. And what they've actually determined is there is pretty much an accurate WHR that most people seek after when it comes to women specifically. This WHR is 0.7. So basically have a 0.7 waist to hip ratio. Now, you can go look up images of what this looks like. And again, I can't stress this enough. This is not set in stone, okay? This is not set in stone. If you happen to enjoy the figure of a woman who does not look anything like this, then, you know, that's cool. You know, at the end of the day, like what you like. If you happen to like, you know, whatever, you know, like, but I'm just telling you, on average, whenever they did these experiments, this is about what they came out to. So you may be wondering, what is this 0.7 WHR? What does that look like? Well, this is one, basically almost every single, I think Miss America or Miss Universe, one of those things, almost every single one of them have this body type, and most supermodels, especially Victoria's Secret models, have this same 0.7 waist to hip ratio. Now, I also want to preface something else. Understand this much. This 0.7 waist to hip ratio does not dictate BMI. That's very important. So understand that. It doesn't really matter how much body fat you have. It's just a matter of aligning to this specific ratio. Now, I've been saying this number 0.7 over and over again, and you're probably thinking, what does this 0.7 waist to hip ratio look like? Well, I guarantee you've heard it before, and it's essentially the hourglass figure. So, like I said, understand this. 0.7 does not automatically mean skinny. It does not automatically mean anything. It's simply just a ratio of how your body looks at whatever body weight that you may be in. So if you are a BBW, you can still have a 0.7 waist to hip ratio. It all just depends, I guess, how you are structured. And the unfortunate truth about that is just kind of a roll of the dice, because it doesn't really matter if you are big or small. This is really going down to bone structure, if anything. So if you happen to have this 0.7 waist to hip ratio, it would show irregardless to your weight until you, of course, get to that 600-pound life weight. Then that's a whole other ball game we're in right now. And as for you fellas, or people of masculine nature, when it comes to you, this is mostly what people look for. They look for someone who is, I'm not gonna say the opposite of what I just said for women, but more or less broad shoulders. Broad shoulders is something that people look for. Not really love handles or anything like this. And I mean, I got like a tiny love handle. It's like a baby one, you know what I mean? Like a little tiny little lunch pail, like just tiny little handle on me. But anyways, but yeah, you're mostly looked at for having, you know, broad shoulders, you know, big chest, like kind of guy. And again, can't stress this enough. Everyone's tastes are different. Listen, I know how the comments go. I'm just trying to get in front of this, okay? And I'm gonna wrap around as to why these features are sought after, but you probably already know why these features are sought after in your head. Of course it's evolution, but we'll get to that in a bit. Another feature, and this now we're getting into the face. So believe it or not, despite anything you've thought of, because you can hear certain opinions on the internet such as, this is one I see often, oh, we're glorifying European beauty standards, or oh, we're now trying to do cultural appropriation and pick up ethnic beauty standards with, you know, bigger lips or, you know, different whatever, things like that, right? So funny enough, none of that is really true, believe it or not. So whenever we talk about beauty standards and what people are actually looking for, what every single person on earth is actually looking for, even if you are unaware of it, is symmetry. It's not any specific features, which, you know, you may be a person that's like, oh, I like big lips or, you know, whatever. But believe it or not, what we overall view as, oh, this is an attractive person is symmetry, which makes a lot of sense because even in the human psyche, what we don't like is unpredictability. It can be fun, you know, to be surprised in certain instances. But more or less, whenever we talk about things like that or being spontaneous, it's in a way to where it's still controlled to our own fixed expectations. Humans generally don't like to be in a predicament where things are going to be unexpected. And you can look at this from a societal standpoint, such as domestication and just honestly civility in its whole. We are trying to find ways to where things are predictable for us. This is why we've evolved from being hunter-gatherers to where we had unpredictable meals to, you know, having irrigation and crops. And why am I just over-explaining? But you get the picture. Symmetry is something that is predictable. It is something that is aligned. And this is what we look for. And this is what we actually deem as attractiveness in our heads, even if we don't realize it. So, believe it or not, most people's faces are not really as symmetrical as you may believe. So whenever you look at someone, you're like, man, I don't know what it is about her face, but it's just something. More than likely, it's probably a more symmetrical face than you would be led on to believe. A few people that are actually known to have symmetrical faces, one for men, Denzel Washington. What happened to my mouth? It like fumbled. Denzel Washington is actually someone who is known to have a pretty symmetrical face. This has actually been talked about for quite some time. And even more specifically, when it comes to men, you are more or less looked at for having a square jaw, and I think they even said possibly even a protruding forehead. Sounds pretty Neanderthalish to me, but whatever. And when it comes to women, you are more sought after if you have, of course, like I said before, a symmetrical face, but more specifically, eyes that aren't too close together, and of course, big, full, luscious lips. Now, all of this combined together, for some reason, just screams out procreation with us. So that more or less is what we are still trying to figure out, and understand that all those scientists have made great leaps and bounds to try to figure out what we find as attractiveness. We are still a long way from cracking the official science and figuring out by law this is what goes across the board for everyone. But what I just named around this actually fits for more people than you realize. Most people, I would even argue. And I can't stress this enough at the very end of the video, wrapping this up on a bow. Well, not into the video, but into the segment. Again, understand that these are just key factors. Everyone's on a sliding scale somewhere. You may find this attractive. You may find that attractive. Whatever. It is what it is. But when it comes to this is mostly what people look for. This is what triggers our little ape prehistoric person inside of our head that says, ooh, me likey, me want to make boom boom for future peoples that we make. These are the things that make us do that. And for the last one, I wanted to wrap this one up because this is something that I too have even believed myself at some point in time. And you may believe it. If you don't, you've definitely probably heard of it. And that is eating past 8 p.m. has terrible consequences for you. So what is basically going on with this? Well, what is basically said is if you eat past 8 p.m., then it's just going to completely jack up your metabolism. You're going to gain weight over time if you keep doing it, because whenever you try to go to sleep at night, your body is not being able to process or metabolize anything that you ate prior to this. So that's the claim. If you eat past 8 p.m., you automatically gain weight. That's the claim. So let's get into it and figure out what's the actual truth. So the actual truth is no, not really. There are some factors I'll get into at the end that could potentially make you gain weight at night if you do this. But it all comes back down to the same exact science over and over again. So can you eat past 8 p.m.? The answer is yes, you can eat past 8 p.m. The claim, like I said before, is that once you go to sleep, your body is like on this like skeleton crew basically. So you're not able to metabolize what you just ate fully. So then your body just automatically stores it into fat. Not true. Actually, your body is just going to keep processing and metabolizing as it normally would. If anything, eating past 8 p.m. could potentially mess up your sleeping, because since your body is still working at normal capacities, you are potentially interrupting your sleep. Also, it depends on what you eat, especially if it's something along the lines of spicy food. You could potentially sweat in your sleep. You sweating in your sleep could cause and trigger a whole chain reaction of things. Now, again, can't stress this enough. When we deal with the human body, there are so many factors. So none of this is by nature set in stone for any of this video, but it just provides you into more aspect of things that aren't 100% set in stone, if that makes sense. So you could potentially have nightmares or potentially weird dreams if you do eat past 8 p.m. There are certain foods such as cheeses, certain dairies, spicy food as mentioned, and many other types of things that could trigger you to have weird dreams or possibly nightmares. And again, although this may not mess with your metabolism, it can mess with your sleep cycles. And if you mess with your sleep cycles, that could mess with other functions in your life, such as energy and just, of course, overall recovery. Now, they actually did this test on, don't know how to pronounce this, like Ryus monkeys. And they basically had this group of monkeys and they fed them at different times, but they tried to keep most other things on the same exact schedule. The reason why they did those particular monkeys is those monkeys have DNA that is about 93% close to us, especially when it comes to digestion and metabolism. They did these monkeys and they tested them, they fed them at different schedules, and the results were basically nothing changed. Nothing at all changed. These monkeys all gained the same exact amount of weight. Also, they put them on a diet that was very similar to what we would eat as well if we were doing this experiment. So there was no overall changes or differences at all. All of the monkeys had the same exact weight gain, and it did not matter if they ate past 8 p.m. or if they ate earlier in the day. Didn't matter at all. So that's the key takeaway. And overall, what the message was behind this is it does not matter when you eat. It always matters what you eat and how much you eat. So it all comes down to your caloric intake. And some people, I believe, process certain things better than others, such as like carbohydrates. So that's literally what it comes down to, is how much did you eat overall from a caloric standpoint throughout the day. Doesn't really matter when you eat, it just matters how much you eat. Very, very important. Also, this overall doesn't make sense because people live different lifestyles as well. You know, what if I work a night shift, right? Does that mean that I have to starve myself until the sun comes up the next day and I can't eat at midnight? No, obviously. So people have different circadian rhythms as well, which is also why this was pretty much immediately debunked. Now, there are other factors. How many times am I going to say that this video? And one of the main ones is, and this is actually a good point, but again, remember what I said, it all comes down to caloric intake. So one of the arguments is essentially you can gain weight if you eat past 8 p.m., but that is because of the options of food that are provided for you. So for example, let's say that you get off of work, I don't know, let's say you work something like maybe 5 a.m. to 3 p.m., right? Well, chances are whenever you get off work, you're going to have better and healthier options. And we know this. Most healthy places kind of shut down and close for the day around anywhere between 3 to 5, maybe 6 p.m., right? Versus me, let's say I work, I don't know, noon to 9 p.m. or 10 p.m. Well, when I get off, chances are there's nothing but like, you know, McDonald's and Taco Bell and Whataburger and all these other options that are open that aren't going to have the same healthy nutritional options that you may have if you get off at 3 p.m. So you could make the argument that yes, the food options are more, you know, higher or denser in calories, and are there bad things? But that still just goes back down to it still just depends on what you intake, you know, from a caloric standpoint. So yes, you can eat whatever you want throughout the day. Just keep in mind how many calories. But other than that, that's about it for this video. Man, a lot of controversy in there. You know, we talked about, you know, men versus women. We talked about, you know, body shapes essentially, and we talked about diets. Boy, firing on all cylinders for making people angry. But anyways, I hope you got a little bit of information out of this. Again, I can't stress enough, all of this is still, you know, just discretionary information. It literally changes from person to person. There is no set in stone values. If you'd like to, you could check with like possibly a nutritionist, figure out maybe what your caloric intake should be for who you are, your age, your size, all that good matter, all that good jazz. And the same thing applies for the waist to hip ratio thing. Again, like I said, it doesn't really matter, you know, you can be bigger or smaller. It just kind of matters if you fit into that. And, you know, that just kind of comes down to bone structure. You either got it or you don't. You either have broad shoulders or you don't. You either have an hourglass figure or you don't. At the end of the day, that's not what's important, because I guarantee you, there's people out there that are built like bowling balls that are in relationships all the time. Don't get caught up on that. You just need to get caught up on making yourself a better person for you, and the rest will fall into place. Hope this has been a great video for you. I hope you're having a fantastic day, and I'll see you in the next one. Toodaloo.